Tonight, we continue to celebrate all things unique to West Texas. We're taking a look back at the oil boom across our region in the 1920s, which exploded to an all-time high. News West 9's Lily Beth Valles has the story.
One of the trains that ran through was the Texas Pacific Railroad, and they didn't have a water stop.
Traveling by train.
So he decided to stop here, and he dug a well, and it became Monahans Well was the name of the community.
Once put this Texas town on the map.
With the oil boom going on, they needed a place to store the oil. And so they dug out this enormous pit.
Today, it's a hole in the ground at the edge of town that's made its mark.
And we have people from all over the world. We have register books in most of the museums, and we've had people as far as Germany come in and visit.
And kept people coming back to dig deep into Ward County history. It's Monahans' one and only million-barrel tank.
We are one of three. The other million-barrel is located in McCamey, Texas, and the third one is in California.
Like Ward County librarian Brenda Kazar says, this tank itself isn't one in a million, but the concrete bowl
actually has the capacity to hold 1,084,000 barrels of oil.
A dent in the ground that wasn't accidental. Instead, back in 1928, the Roxana Petroleum Corporation.
They were a branch off of the Shell oil.
Bought the piece of land that sits on the eastern edge of Monahans near Highway 80. Quickly, they brought in three things. Men.
Since they moved the men in, they didn't have places to stay. So east of Monahans, a little bit out, they had just a tent city where these men would go and rest and sleep.
Muscles.
It was around the clock, but if you look at the vastness of the barrel, it took 90 days, and that was them working all the time.
And the mules.
The men and their mules that dug out the barrel, they were nicknamed mule skinners.
The result? A 35-foot deep dish worth $250,000.
The million barrel measures 522 feet by 426 feet.
But as luck would have it, the tank was filled with oil only once.
Unfortunately, it did not work out. The barrel only held oil for one day, and they discovered a leak. It was built specifically just for holding the oil, but they discovered that the asphalt the oil did something to the asphalt, so there was under the foundation a leak.
The empty bowl in the middle of West Texas was left deserted. Its wooden lid taken apart for lumber just a few years later. All it had left to hold was random moments like this one in 1950, when more than 1,500 dancers swarmed into the million-barrel tank and brought it back to life. Nearly 3 decades after it first took shape,
in 1957, the million barrel was purchased by a couple, Mr. and Mrs. Wayne Long, and they wanted to turn it into a reservoir where people could come out and bring their boats and ski, and they could do fishing, and it could just be like a family spot.
Million Barrel Tank turned into Melody Park. It was a long-term dream for Mr. Long that was cut short in October of 1959.
Just like with the million barrel, with the oil, Melody Park opened and closed the same day because the leak.
Million Barrel Tank couldn't hold oil, it couldn't hold water, but it went on to hold a museum of memories.
Mr. Wayne Long passed away, and his wife, she just kept the million barrel. And in the 80s, she decided, this was after Wayne's passing, she decided to donate the million barrel to the Ward County Historical.
During the mid-80s, the Sesquicentennial Committee and the Historical Association of Ward County banded together to preserve the hole in the ground, making it the anchor of the Million Barrel Tank Museum.
In 1984, that's when they moved the Holman House out to the museum.
The notable home from 1910 was rebuilt.
The Holman House the Holman family was one of the founding families of Monahans, and they had the first hotel.
Everything inside these century-old walls speak of what it was like to book a stay at the Holman Hotel. The museum's 14 acres serving as a neighborhood of some of Ward County's biggest recollections.
This is the Rattlesnake Bomber Base.
But there's always that snake somewhere in the neighborhood.
That is a replica of the rattlesnake emblem that the men would wear on their jackets. And that was designed by Disney.
The Pyote Army Base was one of the largest training bases for B-17 and B-29 crews back in the 40s.
Those are called spotter cards, and they weren't just for playing poker. They have the silhouettes of the different planes, and this is how a lot of the airmen would learn how to distinguish planes.
After the war, some of the craft was melted down. Other precious pieces of this part of Pyote's history now up for display. Who would have thought that exploring a hole in the ground could take you back in time to get a glimpse of Ward County history?